So today we're going to be discussing the area of a parallelogram. So we're doing area and perimeter. So when we start here, we have if a parallelogram has an area of A, so we're using a capital A, square units, the base is a lowercase b units, and the height is a lowercase h units, then we can use this formula, capital A equals b times h. Okay, so if we look at this one, we can find the area by taking the base here times the height. And if you remember, the height is always perpendicular to your base. So now if we're looking at perimeter, just a little bit of review of perimeter. Perimeter is the distance around a closed shape, or it's the length of its boundary. So kind of like if we have a fence, it's the amount of fencing that goes all the way around a yard. So for this one, to find the perimeter of a shape, we're going to add the lengths of all of its sides. So for our perimeter here, we're going to take 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6. So I just went around 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we end up with a total perimeter of 18. And then our label is yards. Now since this is perimeter, it's just length, so we're just using yards. When we go to area, that's when we go to our square units. Okay, so if I move down here, we have area. Area is the amount of the surface or the size of a surface. The amount is measured in our square units. So for this picture here, sorry, let me just adjust a little bit here so I can get all of that in. There we go. So we're taking this one here, the area of this, area equals base times height. My base here is 3, and my height here, perpendicular to the base, is also 3. So my area is 3 times 3, which is 9, and that's centimeters squared. Remember we said square units. Our units are centimeters, so it is centimeters squared. Okay, let's do a few examples. So our first example here, we have a parallelogram. We're going to be finding the perimeter and area of this parallelogram. So for our perimeter, if you remember a parallelogram, we know that all of the sides, the opposite sides, are going to be the same. So for perimeter, we're going to be taking our sides. We have a 12, adding it to the 18. This side over here would also be 12, so plus 12, and then the bottom would also be 18, so plus 18. So then when we add all of those together for our perimeter, we should get a total of 60 inches. Okay, if we add the 12 and the 18, 8 and 2 is 10, 20, 30, and then we do that again, we get our 60. Okay, so that's the easy one. So then we're going on to area. And if you remember, we said area equals base times height. Well, we know our base is 18, so b equals 18. What about our height? Do we know our height here? Well, we don't know it yet, but we do have a 30, 60, 90 triangle, so we're going to find our height. So when we find our height for our 30, 60, 90 triangle, if you remember back to when we were talking about all of that, you can look back in your notes. This is our 60, so here's our 30. So we have x, we have 2x, and we have x square root of 3. Those were our sides. We know that this one is 12, So 2x is 12. So then what does that mean for my x? Well, then my x has to be 6 because 2x is 12. So then I plug it in over here. I have 6 square root of 3. Okay, so now that we have the height, 6 square root of 3, we can plug that into our formula. Area equals, I'm going to move down here, area equals base, which was 18, times height, which was 6 square root of 3. And then we should get 108 square root of 3. And that is approximately 187.1. And this is area, so we're looking at inches squared. Okay, so pulling in some of our 30, 60, 90 stuff that we did before the break. Let's look at another example. So here's a real world problem. So we have a floor plan here. Actually, let me pull up just a little bit further so you can see all of that. There we go. So we have a floor plan here, and the Warners are planning to recarpet part of their first floor of their house. So here's the first floor of their house. So they're going to be carpeting part of that. We're going to find the amount of carpeting needed to cover the living room, the den, and the hall. Okay? So they're only going to be doing the living room, the den, and the hallway. So we need to find area here. So I'm going to start with the den. Area is carpeting, so area equals base times height. The base for the den is this one here. We have 15. And the height perpendicular to the base is here. That one says 9. So when we do the area there, we get 135 feet squared. Then we're moving on to the hallway. The hall, we're taking area equals base times height again. So when we're looking at the hallway, the height of my hallway would be the same as the living room, so my height is going to be 13. My base, though, it doesn't tell me my base. It says this is 15 and this is 15. And up here it tells me that this is 30 and this is 5. Sorry, let me scoot that down. This is 30 across the kitchen and this is 5. So the total length would be 35. So if I have 15 and 15, that gives me 30. So then I know that this is 5 feet. Okay, so I can put that down here for 5. So then my hallway would end up being 65 feet squared. Okay, so we still have one more. We still need to do the living room. So I'm going to scoot down here again. So we've got our living room. Area equals base times height. So let's look at our living room. We have a base of 15, and a height perpendicular to my base is 13. So that goes in there. So then when I multiply those, I get a total of 195 feet squared. Now if I'm trying to find how much total, find the amount of carpeting needed to cover all of them, so then I'm going to be adding those together. I have 135, 65, and 195. So then when I add all of those together, I get 395 feet squared. Okay. Questions on that, please make sure you write them on your WSQ so that way we can discuss them tomorrow in class. Let's do one more. This time we're going to be dealing with coordinates, so if you do have graph paper, I would get that out. So for this one, I'm telling you that this is a parallelogram. We're going to find the area of this parallelogram with coordinates. Now, since I know it's a parallelogram, there's a few things that I know. I know that this base and the top base are going to be equal. I know that these sides are going to be equal to one another. I also know that the slopes of these are the same and the slopes of these are the same. So there's some different information I know there. But my formula, area equals base times height. For this one, I think these are much easier because you actually have squares to be able to count. So my base here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a total of 6 units for my base. And then my height, I'm going to go straight up to my second base. So I have 1, 2, 3 units there for my height. So then when I multiply those, I'm going to get 18. And since I don't have a label here, if this is inches, feet, miles, yards, I'm just going to put units squared. Okay? Alright, I will see you in class tomorrow. Have a great evening.